Welcome to Monday through Friday, Cellular Agriculture for a Pandemic-Free Future. My name is George Ortega, and this is episode number 56. I'm recording it on Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020 at 5:40 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'm going to try to shift back from, these dire warnings, very realistic, but, very kind of severe warnings about what to expect if we do nothing, if we just come out of this pandemic thinking that we're going to be lucky and avoid another one. I'm going to focus today, I've done other episodes on this, on a positive note, what we can expect as we move, as we do what we should be doing about this pandemic. Before that, I just want to, want to highlight, I just went through, I did a search for how much we've spent so far on this COVID-19. And according to the Washington Post, an article in April, as of April, we had spent $6 trillion already. Okay. I had mentioned a congressional budget report in May that predicted we were on our way to spending $8 trillion, but that was before the surge of June and July, and that was before we kind of understood that no, this wasn't going to go away before the summer. So, probably more reasonable estimate is that this is probably costing us 10 trillion, perhaps more. And so the message of this, just before I go through what the kind of world we can create by doing this, the message is that, that basically we have a way of preventing future pandemics. It's called cellular agriculture. It's, in the title of the show, and it's simply closing down factory farming. Forget about the morality of it. Just look at the practical scientific aspects of it. Farming animals, especially factory farming, puts us at a very unacceptable level of risk for future pandemics. So, I've been advocating, basically, I got to go through this. All right. So like this new industry, cellular agriculture, it's called clean meat, cultured meat, lab-grown meat, cell-based meat. It's got different names. It emerged in 2013. The first proof of concept, Mark Post, a researcher from the Netherlands, premiered the first hamburger patty, made through this process, that it involves growing cells outside of the animal. So animals are not hurt in this. I think it's a major plus. And since then, there's about 40 to 50 startups that are racing to get these products on the market. But when I say racing, that's probably not the right word, because there's about $1.5 billion invested in this new industry. And at this level of investment, this rate of progress that this investment allows for, industry insiders predict it'll probably be 10 years or longer before these products are in supermarkets and restaurants, at affordable prices, because there are research challenges that need to be met before this can happen. So the message of this series, again, 56 episodes so far, is that if we ramp up investment, if we invest, let's say, $50 billion, not in 10 years, not over 10 years, but starting in March, as soon as Biden is the president, just in 2021, just pump $50 billion into this industry, it is very reasonable to expect that we can have these products in supermarkets in 2 or 3 years. So for those of us who might be thinking, well, that's such a huge expense, consider that it is, if we end up spending $8 trillion on this pandemic, and again, it seems like we will be spending more, that will amount to 1/2 of 1% of that amount. So it's like, it's essentially nothing. The average homeowner spends about 4.5% of the price of their home on homeowners insurance over the course of 10 years for a risk that almost never happens. People very rarely lose their houses to fires and floods and things like that. So, all right, so that's the premise. Now, what I want to like key you in on is that this entire crisis might be a blessing in disguise, because like what's looming ahead of us, well, this doesn't sound like a very positive episode. Yes, I will turn it around. I will, I have to turn around. So basically, but what's looming ahead of us is climate change. And for example, there's been some news stories over the last several weeks that part of the Arctic that wasn't supposed to melt for decades is beginning to melt, or it's substantially melting. And this shelf, the shelf of the Arctic, if it breaks off and then it starts floating into the ocean and then melts very rapidly, we can expect a 10-foot increase in sea level. And the problem with that, aside from everything else that the climate change threatens us with, because the threats are like, I got hotter droughts, floods, hurricanes, I mean, like you name it. But just the sea level rise alone, you would think 10 feet, actually, if it increased 1/2 of a foot, that's major. That is major. That's kind of like, if our global climate temperature increases by 1 degree Celsius, that's major. 2 degrees Celsius, game over. So like the problem with climate change, and just considering this this rise in sea level, is that about 80% of civilization, our cities, our population, our human population, is concentrated on the shores of our continents. And that makes sense because, that's where the ports are, that's where the shipping is, that's where, countries develop their commerce. So imagine, a 10-foot rise means, game over for that, all those cities. We're gonna have to like just rebuild everything, and imagine the cost of that. And this may be in several decades. And, it was predicted to happen in perhaps 50 to 100 years. It may come sooner. So, all right, now that you know the what we need to do and what's at stake, I want you to imagine the extent of cooperation that it will take to end the farming of animals on this planet. It's like with climate change. It's not something that we can do and other countries, don't have to, or that, we don't have to and other countries can, and it'll be fixed. This is a kind of problem. If one country is farming animals, that puts the entire world at risk for future pandemics. So basically, we have to like end the farming of animals, not just factory farms, but smaller farms also, everywhere in the world. So think about it. Think about it. Imagine, our politicians finally get this, finally appreciate, that it's just not worth the risk to both live through an era of fear of the next pandemic and, God forbid, go through another one that could be 10, 20, 30 times worse than this one. So yeah, I want you to imagine the level of cooperation. Right now, countries are competing with each other economically, for resources. And, we have a relatively peaceful world. It's actually a more peaceful world than we've ever had, most parts of the world. And we have a lot to lose. We've really created a wonderful world in many ways. So basically what this means is like, we will have to summon up the will, the morality, the wisdom, the prudence to to bring the countries together. And this is actually what the United Nations was intended to do after World War II. The United Nations has never been given the power it's needed to do the good it could do. But at least now it exists as the infrastructure, the institution that can facilitate this global cooperation. And that's not the only institution. There are other international institutions that can cooperate. Even the countries themselves, have the organizational apparatus to make this possible. So imagine our world. After this, election and this, we're still going to be in the distancing, physical distancing next year. Who knows how long we'll be wearing masks? Maybe we'll stop wearing masks in 2022. I don't know. But imagine, with a leader, with a president, Biden, who really, I don't think he cares enough, but he cares a lot more about our country, the world, than Trump, a lot more. So we have him in power, and all of a sudden, good things are beginning to happen. Remember that one of the reasons we're in this is because Trump still hasn't addressed this. He's still denying the seriousness of this. He's still not doing what he needs to do to make sure there's enough masks and testing. So the man is evil beyond description. So we don't have him to deal with, after January 20th, 2021, and we can face this this crisis. The crisis being our future. The future of the planet. Again, with the risk of future pandemics and climate change, we can face this with a reasonable chance of doing at least the best we can, to try to contain it. And actually, with climate change, it's a bit more iffy. I'm not sure how much we can do, although that again is as a business as usual scenario understanding. I mean, if we're doing, in 10, 20 years, as little as we're doing now, yeah, it's pretty hopeless. But if we just change our ways, then perhaps we really can overcome climate change also, these really dire effects. And so that's the value of undertaking this historic, the first ever global initiative, to do something so grand, to end an industry that's worth $1.3 trillion and replace it with another one that will keep us safe from pandemics. The closest maybe we come to this is perhaps the Manhattan Project. It was like the United States alone, just like racing to develop a nuclear weapons, a nuclear bomb. And I think we employed, if I'm not mistaken, about, I may get it wrong. It's either over 1,000, it could be over 100,000, I don't remember. But so again, think of what this will entail. One of the problems we've been ignoring for decades is extreme poverty, which affects mainly Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, some parts of South America, and some parts of Asia. And now, the wonderful thing about this project to make us pandemic risk-free, I mean, transitioning from the farming of animals to the cellular agriculture will make us about 99+% free of the risk of future pandemics. So in order to do that, again, we have to ensure that there's no farming anywhere, of animals. And naturally, because some of these poor countries in Africa don't have the funds to launch this new industry, we'll need to help them. And by that, perhaps we can help them so much that they can feed their populations properly, so their children aren't dying at a rate of about almost 10 million a year from largely poverty-related causes, malnutrition, lack of clean water, lack of proper medicine. We can, by helping them develop their economy, so they're eating meat and fish and dairy, they're eating nutritious meals. We can help them hopefully rise up out of poverty. So we're doing two wonderful things at once, and we're also, again, this is what we need to show us that that we have what it takes to tackle climate change. Up until now, nobody's really been serious. The Democrats talk a good game, but I'm sorry, Obama was in there 8 years. He pretty much, he focused on healthcare, which is great, but so this hopefully can give us the will, can inform us that we have what it takes to tackle climate change. And that's a major, major achievement. So to turn this whole era around, this era of distancing, this crisis, it could be, because we never know sometimes whether something's for the best or not, whether it's in our interest or not. We're only ever guessing. And so this is, killing a lot of people. It's destroying a lot of businesses. It's costing the United States alone, it's going to be over $8 trillion. But the good that can come out of this might make that expense and, the loss, like a silver lining to a cloud. For example, we lost so many people after World War II, but we created a better world. The Depression was really hard on people, but we created a better world after that, the New Deal. So yes, not to minimize the loss that we're experiencing, we'll continue to experience, but by learning from this, by not maintaining our denial of what causes pandemics and our role in this, by summoning the will to do what it takes and involve the whole world and just put together this coalition of countries, every country, to address this, we will be creating perhaps a much better world than, let's say, 5-10 years from now, than would have existed otherwise. That maybe in the long run we'll end up saving many more lives because of this. Because this awoke our conscience. It awoken us. It basically just showed us that we have been immoral and irresponsible and cruel. My God, the way we treat these animals. I haven't even got into this that much this episode. Yesterday's episode I did a lot. But the way we treat these animals, like the Vatican just, I just read, they came out strongly against euthanasia. That's where somebody's like 80, 90 years old. They're just slowly dying in a lot of pain. The Vatican doesn't want mercy killing. They want those people to stay alive, and suffer, however long. Yet they won't come out against factory farming. They won't come out against the farming of animals. They're silent against this, what we need to do about this pandemic. So, we actually, that really points to, we need a religious reformation also, a global religious reformation, because, Google it. The clerics are not talking about this. Clerics are not saying anything. They're beholden to their congregations. They're as basically beholden to their congregations as politicians are to their voters and especially to corporations. And that needs to change, because if the media doesn't care, the New York Times, Washington Post, they could have been running a series of stories. What do we do to prevent, future pandemics? Look it up, Google it. You won't find anything, very little, because they're not doing it, because they don't care. They're businesses, you know, or they don't want to upset the status quo. So if the media, which is supposed to be the watchdog of our politics, our governments, are not doing anything, if the media is not doing anything, if our politicians aren't doing anything, you know, it pretty much is up to the clerics, you know, ministers, priests, rabbis, you know, all denominations, all religions, because, you know, they're supposed to be our closest to our moral compass. They're supposed to really, you know, basically, it's the institute, the world institution that is most connected with guiding us to teaching us about morality. I mean, we have the criminal justice system, but you know, their approach is like, you know, there's no carrot and stick for them. They just like, you do something wrong, you know, you get imprisoned and you know, or whatever. I mean, it's just about punishment for them. So so yeah, it may be that clerics are they need to step up to the plate, you know, and take on the Vatican. You know, you're talking about like, you know, perpetuating the suffering of, let's say, 80, 90-year-olds who have no chance of recovery, who probably would prefer the blessing of death, you know, because death, I mean, you go back to God, presumably under Christianity, under Judaism. It's not like it's against their theology to expect that they will enter into a better existence after death. For the Vatican to come out in favor of just like, you know, oh, let them suffer, you know, because it's wrong to take the life of someone. Yeah. Well, you know, if they care so much about life, let them, you know, come out in favor of ending the farming of animals that results in the torture of 70 billion, you know, farm animals every year. Yeah, we're, you know, this is supposed to be a very optimistic. What can I tell you? These are like challenging times. And it is, you know, again, I want to hold out this message. Let me try again. Yes, this is an opportunity to get something right, you know, to stop being in denial. For God's sakes, people like, you know, what are you paying attention to? What are you thinking? You're really trusting our politicians, you know, that they've got a handle on this? You know, read, look up, you know, what are we doing to prevent the next pandemic? That's all you have to do. Google that. You know, you'll find that there's very little on that, you know. So we need to change. And again, if we change, we'll create a much, much better world for our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. If we don't, well, you know, it's a living hell for them. You know, that's what climate change promises, you know, between the sea level rise and the, for example, like some West Nile virus. Okay, West Nile virus, I think it emanates from mosquitoes that, you know, originated in the tropics where it's really hot. Well, guess what? Here in Westchester, in New York State, we have some cases of West Nile virus. Why is that? Because climate change is making the climate warmer. And so these mosquitoes are migrating, you know, way beyond the West Nile, apparently, you know, where they originated. And all right, so again, like, you know, and let's have people, politicians, you know, even the pundits, you know, like let's have people talk about, you know, to inspire people to care about this, to demand of our leaders that we take action, that, you know, demand they protect us from future pandemics. I mean, how many people really want to go through another one of these? You know, it's got to be very few, you know. I mean, businesses, you know, ordinarily businesses could care less about the environment. You know, what Trump has been doing to environmental regulations over the last 3-4 years, you know, Biden and the Democrats will have to undo, you know, the sooner the better. But, you know, corporations generally are, you know, it doesn't affect them. You know, climate change isn't affecting their bottom line today. That's no longer true. That's no longer true. You know, like so many, Lord and Taylor, a chain that's been in existence for 200 years, is out of business. You know, Sizzler, another chain just filed for bankruptcy. There's, you know, and we're not even halfway through this, you know, and they're, you know, before the summer surge, they were wondering, well, you know, is what the Fed has done, is what our stimulus packages have done enough to revive our economy? And they were thinking, well, yeah, if we're lucky, if we have a good summer and a good fall, then perhaps. Well, you know, it's now fall, and you know, it's our understanding. No, we're just waiting for this next wave. We're waiting for what, you know, doctors predict will be an apocalyptic fall, you know. And, you know, I'm not sure it's going to be all that bad. I hope it's not. But even if it stays at the level that it is now, even if it doesn't get any worse, that's not good for our economy, and that's not good for business. So like, this is a crisis where, you know, business can no longer be indifferent like they are to climate change, to the environment. And, you know, I mean, ideally, let's get money out of politics, because that's the, you know, you talk about the root cause of all this stuff. If there wasn't any money in politics, we would have listened to our scientists decades ago warning us about this, and we would have taken the proper measures, whether it would have been universal vaccines or transitioning, you know, away from farming animals, whatever would have, you know, we would have done that. But as long as, you know, we allow these corporations to spend as much as they have, as much as they want to buy our politicians, you know, we're screwed. Our children are screwed, and future generations are screwed. You know, and it's kind of an irony. We here in the United States care more about freedom, the freedom to, like, you know, to spend money on our elections, the freedom to allow people to just do whatever they want, regardless of the consequences, regardless of the harm they do. We care more about that freedom than we do about ourselves and our children, and that needs to change. All right, this was like a somewhat successful attempt to paint a positive, you know, to just like to highlight the better world we can have after this. I'll try again, hopefully tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Catch this every Monday through Friday, 5 p.m., channel 76. If you get Optimum 45, Verizon on White Plains Community Media. And episodes are also on YouTube in video. And if you have iTunes or Spotify, they're also available in audio versions. So yeah, I think it's important for me to, you know, especially this is a difficult time, this election season. It's important for me to just summon up whatever I need to just paint a more optimistic picture of what we can do, rather than continuing to threaten us with what we're in for if we don't. All right, thanks for watching, and God willing, I'll see you tomorrow.